Happy spooky season. Today I have a vintage inspired spooky craft. I will be making a vintage looking Halloween candy pail. As you see here, I do already have one made. However, there are things like the eyes and nose that I don't particularly like. So I'm going to be trying again. This is inspired by Over the Garden Wall. This was a villager, and I do have one other small pail that'll be a villager, and one larger pumpkin that will be Enoch. And my goal is to hang him from my wall and the ceiling, and have his tendrils hanging down.
So I started by covering the candy pail with Mod Podge and then adhering paper towel to it. I did this so the paper clay would stick better to the pail instead of just the smooth plastic. And then I did the same process with the larger pail. Here I am peeling the glue off my hands, which I may or may not keep this in the video. I just thought it was funny, honestly. And then after all that was dried, I covered the entire candy pail in paper clay, which I only did on the smaller ones. I sculpted the face, and I started with the eyes, then the nose, and then the mouth. Once that's all dry, I think it took about a day to dry, then I painted it. I ended up painting the whole thing in Mod Podge after it was already dried, but I don't recommend that unless you do want a more shiny look. I was slightly disappointed by how she came out at the end, and I did end up repainting her later. And now here we are sculpting on Enoch's face, and as you can see, I did not cover the entire pail in paper clay because honestly I was just too lazy and did not want to do it. And the plastic on the larger ones are slightly, I don't know if it's necessarily thinner, but they have more like give to them when you press on it. So I just decided to do only the areas that I was sculpting on or adding clay to. Then we painted it. I ended up changing the paint color of the eyes and mouth. Painted his stripes, repainting his eyes and mouth, and then painting his teeth. I started by drawing on the lines with a marker. I was hoping that I would just be done there, but it was flaking and ruining the paint around his mouth. So I did decide to go in with a thin tipped brush and just paint on his teeth, as well as the stripes separating the different colors of his head. And there he's done being painted.
This is what we did, and this is what we're doing. That's a plan. Let's do it.
Next, I prepped all the fabric that I thrifted from Goodwill. When I was searching for a fabric, I was looking for fabric that wasn't too heavy and that could flow really nice. And I really liked the first fabric a lot because it did have sort of like a sheen to it, but I don't know, the way it moves was honestly kind of beautiful. So I'm glad that I found that. Here I am posing as Greg because I honestly was debating on if I was going to cut the overalls or not because they did work very well for a Greg cosplay, but I decided to do it anyways. Oops. And then I just filled in any gaps in the bottom with the first fabric. I didn't really use too much of the fabric from the overalls, just enough around the outside, and I used the rest of the fabric for all the hanging bits. And there he is, hung on my ceiling. I really, really like how he came out. The little ones, they're okay. But Enoch, I am very proud of, and I do think that I'll continue to use him as years go on.
I wish I had a better place to put them, however, when I move, maybe. there will be a better place. However, realistically, they should not be up all year. However, knowing me, they'll probably be up starting July to November. Putting that out there. But I'm going to now give you a nice little flow test. Enjoy. Thanks for watching.